1982 as a year was picked for a reason. 1982 to 2022 gives us 40 years, which is a nice round number, but also one game in particular came out that will get its own episode. That's the way most of these years will work, as I think and hope I mentioned previously. I will try to discuss everything, but I can't give every game release its own episode. For one, that's just too much work to be completely transparent. Another reason is that some of these games just don't have enough meat on their bones to talk about. Hell, a lot of these early titles don't even have a release date or month, just a year that they came out. There will be years that have multiple games receiving their own videos, but 1982 is not one of those years. To better understand the releases in their context, let's look at the year as a whole too. For horror movies, it was a fun year. You had instant classics like Poltergeist, Creepshow, and Friday the 13th Part 3, movies that, much like the song Marty plays in Back to the Future, people just weren't ready for, but their kids would love, like Halloween 3 and The Thing, and even some nice foreign horror like Tenebrae, The Living Dead Girl, and New York Ripper. On the small screen, Dark Room would be finishing its 2-season run, and in the realm of the written word, we had things like The Religion, Fever Dream, and Stephen King would put out his first of the Dark Tower series. Oh, and some other guy named Richard Bachman would release The Running Man. 1982 was also just a great year for games overall, even if it was spiraling towards a collapse that could have snuffed out a burgeoning home console field. Arcades were still doing well, as their fall wouldn't come for over 15 years. In terms of landmark game releases, it was packed. Sega released Zaxxon, Midway unleashed Miss Pac-Man without the permission of Namco, who had released Pac-Man in the first place, and Nintendo got into the year with Donkey Kong Jr. Hubert, Joust, Tron, Burger Time, the list goes on, and that was just arcades. On the home and home computer front, Microsoft would give us the first flight simulator game with 1.0, and Ultima got its first of many sequels with Ultima 2. The home consoles would see the Atari port of Pac-Man, the first Star Wars game on Atari with The Empire Strikes Back, and E.T. would infamously come in to ruin many a Christmas. Some other strange or interesting titles would be an Atari Indiana Jones, a pornographic and in poor taste glorification of General Custer, and Pitfall. There would be some consoles of importance released too, with the ColecoVision, the much maligned Atari 5200, and the two-headed monster of the Commodore 64 and ZX Spectrum, which we will see various times throughout this series. Really, you'd be hard-pressed to guess there was a massive crash coming just around the corner with so many important games and consoles being released or on the horizon. To cover everything would be an exercise in humility, and not the point. It's always good to have context and see what was going on, but horror is why we are here, and there was an interesting collection of titles that came out. Licensed titles, rip-offs, licensed titles that were rip-offs, the beginning of a series that had some legs to it, and of course, half of 2 releases that defined generations to come. First off is one of the few games that I have an actual month release date on, and that's Winslow's Mansion for Apple II, which came out in January of 1982. This one was an easy one to track down because it was part of publisher Softside's Adventure of the Month Club program that ran from June of 1981 to January of 1983. They advertised it in their own magazine, and consumers could pay monthly to get monthly games at a reduced cost compared to what games cost at retail. 6 months would run you $27 for cassettes and $45 for the disc versions. This amounted to $4.50 or $7.50 per game, which was a deal then and would be a deal now. Quality, however, could be an issue, but for this game I honestly have no way to tell. I couldn't find any video of it on YouTube and sadly can't get a working copy running. I'm still a novice at hunting down otherwise unobtainable games, you know. Give me some time though and I'll be riding the high seas like the best of them. The game is a text-based adventure that sees the player attempting to rescue the Pumpkin Man from the dungeon underneath the manor. It has a set number of rooms to explore both in and out of the titular mansion, as well as traditional horror monsters like ghosts, vampires, and other gothic treats to deal with. You do the normal text-based actions to use items and walk around, and once you bring back Pumpkin Man, you win with a point total given. Next, we'll look at some games with the nebulous date of sometime in 1982. Monster Maze by Epix is one of those games. It's a fairly basic affair that has the player avoiding monsters in 16 different mazes. There are 48 monsters found within those mazes, and there are also 48 vitamin pills that are the only way to kill the monsters. The monsters are guarding gold bars that the player needs to find. Die 9 times and it's game over, but of note, there is an accessible overhead map to help the players out. It came out on the Atari 8-bit and the VIC-20, and publisher Epyx had a decent career. Starting with their first release in 1978, they made it all the way to the late 90s, covering a range of systems. Their most famous game may be from the Impossible Mission series, but they're also responsible for Summer Games, Winter Games, and the California Games series. Next up is the first of a couple important licensed games for the year. King Kong is one of the greatest creature features ever made. While Peter Jackson did a fun and wonderful update for it, followed by Skull Island and the current Versus series, he got his start all the way back in 1933. Well, there weren't video games then, but then we got the remake starring Jeff Bridges in 1976, we were a lot closer to viable video games. 1982 would give us an actual licensed game from the home console branch of Tiger Electronics simply called King Kong for the Atari 2600. And it's just Donkey Kong. Or at least the first screen of Donkey Kong. You rescue a girl while climbing various ladders and jumping over gaps while Kong tosses what looks like cupcake bombs at you. Neither the level layout nor the music ever changes, but things speed up as they were wont to do in any arcade-type game back then. Sadly, many games were clones, and this is certainly not the last we will see, even this year. Tiger Vision was the actual subsidiary of Tiger that made this, and a few other games, including, well, not much that jumps out, but they did do a lot of arcade conversions for Atari consoles. Tiger Vision wouldn't have much of an impact, but Tiger Handheld Electronics would be a smash hit about a decade later. The Alien is when you ask your parents to buy Alien, based on the 1979 film, for Atari, but they say we have Alien at home. The funny thing about this is that this unlicensed movie game actually does a much better job of being an Alien game than the one released by 20th Century Fox. You play as 7 different crew members with the title of officers, engineers, or scientists trying to capture, kill, and survive against an alien creature who has made it to your ship. Each of these roles has different abilities like accessing a computer system, the armory, setting the self-destruct system, and more. You can see the map of the ship and it will show you where all the players are as well as any other moving life form. To complicate things, however, all of the ship's animals have been released, so it's impossible to discern what is what without actually checking room by room. The goal is to capture or kill the alien, but you can also win by setting the self-destruct system. You can select any person in each room or compartment and tell them what to do, like most text-based adventures. It is simplified here with the players given choices on who to use and what they can act on. It's a simple premise that can get complicated based on who's in the room and what they can do. The alien can attack the player, but it's not a guaranteed kill, and the same goes for the player. The game ends when all the characters are dead, the alien has been killed or captured, or the ship has been blown up. The opening animation at least gives you a fun visual of what is stalking you, non-copyright infringing, legally distinct xenomorphs. Depending on when it was released, because again, 80s computer games, it could very well be the first Alien franchise game, even if it can't be named as such. The Alien was developed and published by Avalon Hill for the Apple II, and while you can play it for free anywhere, it's never been released on a future console. Avalon Hill started way back in 1952 with its publication of the war board game Tactics. They started making microcomputer games in 1980 and continued until the late 90s when they were sold to Hasbro as a subsidiary. As it happens, in the game business anyway, they would continue to move around. They were part of Atari, Wizards of the Coast, and finally Hasbro Interactive, which would give us things like Family Game Night for the Wii. Escape for the ZX Spectrum would bring us back to Malcolm Evans of 3D Monster Maze fame, and it's a very similar experience. This time you track down an axe to escape while avoiding multiple dinosaurs in this game. Some that chase you on foot, and another that swoops down from the skies. The publishing company on the title was New Generation Software, which was started by Evans. It only lasted 4 years and had 11 titles released, all for the Sinclair and ZX Spectrum. Really, it's only on the list because of the similar style to 3D Monster Maze and the same dude, and deserves a mention as it changes the style to completely overhead so you can actually see the creatures chasing you. It hits a different kind of fear than the first-person perspective and moves a lot more freely in my opinion. Transylvania is our last relevant release of 1982 that isn't accompanied by a specific release date. Oddly enough, I couldn't find a specific release date in any of the years it was released. 1982 saw it come out on the Apple II, Atari 8-bit, and Commodore 64. Macintosh would release it in 1984, and 1985 saw it also come out on the Amiga, Atari ST, and MS-DOS platforms. It actually ended up being a series, one of the first on this show, that would run up through the very end of the 1980s. The first game was designed by Antonio Antiochia and published by Penguin Software, something that sounds far more adorable than you would expect a game like Transylvania to come from. Antiochia is only credited with this series, but it's a nice little legacy. Penguin Software was founded in 1978 and had games as late as 1990, but didn't make as much of an impact as that length would suggest. They had some Sesame Street games, a video game based on All Dogs Go to Heaven, and the Transylvania series. This game is another find the princess adventure of sorts. She is stuck in a coffin in the tower of the town, and the player must go get her in time. The game tells you she will be dead at dawn, and that sets off the game's timer. If you've seen King's Quest, it looks like a first-person version of that. There are screens that contain static backgrounds, but sometimes contain weapons, items, or creatures. The creatures include a werewolf, vampire, witch, aliens, and a goblin that will attempt to trick you into a game over. The monsters can follow you across screens too, and you need specific items to defeat them. The werewolf needs a gun and a silver bullet to be found before dispatching him, and the other creatures need similar types of finds and actions. It's a fun and brief experience that, if you know what you're doing, can be completed very quickly. In addition to all of its releases already mentioned, it did get an iOS release in 2009 that is almost certainly gone for good. Unfortunately, and solely because of the arbitrary rules I set up for myself, we come to the final Also Ran release of 1982. Also Ran isn't always derogatory either, though it certainly is in some of the games I covered. These ones merely aren't as important as the ones that will eventually get their own video. Anyway, Alien for the Atari 2600 was released in November of 1982 by Fox Video Games while being designed by Doug Neubauer. He came up with Atari's Pokey chip, which was a massive tech upgrade for them, and designed the game Star Raiders for them, which was also a huge hit. Fox Video Games would eventually be turned into Fox Interactive that lasted from 1994 until about 2003. We will actually see them quite a bit from the late 90s into the late 2000s. They got swallowed up by Vivendi Universal after that, with their final game being the underrated Predator Concrete Jungle. Alien looks cool from the cover. They took the cover from the movie and slapped it right on the cart. I'm sure every kid and adult was duped by this sham of a game. I mean, I'm 40, and in the time before you could get footage of a game or even fast reviews, I would have blind purchased this game with zero regrets. Until I played it, then I would absolutely regret it. Why the regrets? Because this is just Pac-Man. Can you imagine getting this and King Kong at the same time? You would have trust issues for the rest of your life. Look, there was a lot of egregious Pac-Man thievery going on. Even Pac-Man was stolen and given an unsanctioned sequel, so slapping your company's IP of choice on it and calling it a day was a pretty standard move. You play as a crew member of the ship and destroy eggs while fleeing from 3 alien Xenos. I'm sure without the overlaying video here, you'd be able to close your eyes and see exactly what an alien Pac-Man clone would be, and, well, this is it. This is a terrible start for the Alien video game franchise, but man, it will get better. And then it'll get worse, but then it'll get better. We will see some sad examples or outright disappointments, but also be blessed with some really fun stuff. To that end, an Alien game is one of my top 10 horror titles of all time, and another one was a childhood staple for my brother and me. Next time, we'll examine one of the all-time greats that, while quaint in many ways today, set up parts of the next 40 years of horror while also being one half of 2 games that defined a console. Let me know what I missed in 1982 or if there was anything that needed more coverage in the years prior. I'd love to make this as complete as possible and need all your help. Also let me know which was your favorite if you guys played any of these. I'll meet you next time at the front door to Haunted Mansion.